You are listening to Faithless Brewing, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the Spike Rogue. Each week we design new decks for tournament play. We put our creations to the test and share our findings on the air. Expressive Iteration is banned in Pioneer. Winota, Joiner of Forces, is banned in Pioneer. This is not a drill. We break it all down in today's episode and predict the future of the Pioneer meta, plus testing results with Extraction Specialist. That's all coming up on Faithless Brewing. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Faithless Brewing podcast. I am your host, Dan Schriever, also known as Cavedan Online, coming to you on a very dark and stormy night here in Durham, North Carolina. I am joined today all the way from Buenos Aires, Argentina. You know him as Morde to Light. It's Emmy Sagasti. Emmy, welcome.
Heyo, how's it going, Dan? Been a while. How's your stormy night going?
I mean, it's going good so far. The lights are starting to flicker ominously, so we'll see if we get suddenly cut off in the middle of this recording.
I mean, just as we were starting, I had my mysterious lights out.
So. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of drama this week. I thought this was going to be kind of the beginning of the summer slump. You know, there's still a long way to go before the next standard expansion. New Capenna's pretty thin as far as new cards go. And then all of a sudden, this is yesterday, Tuesday morning.
It was all of a sudden. I was taking a nap and I wake up to people talking, and I remember the first comment I read, which I think was yours saying, now that there's no Winota, maybe it's time for a new Naya card, and I was like, wait, no Winota? What are we talking about? Just woken up from a nap and the world is shaken into a new place.
Yeah, big bannings in Pioneer. Winota, Joiner of Forces is gone, but not only that, Expressive Iteration is gone, and that's huge, absolutely huge, and we gotta dig into all of that. So that is our main item of the day. We'll also tell you a little bit about our testing from last week with Extraction Specialist. But before we dive into the main event, let's just get our housekeeping out of the way at the top. Once again, if you like what we do here at the Faithless Brewing podcast, the best way to show your support is by joining our Patreon. Making a pledge at any tier gets you access to our Discord channel, where we got just an awesome community of brewers there, always throwing around wild ideas, and we're kicking off a new project. We wrapped up our first monthly brewing project last week with Invoke Calamity, and we've just wrapped up the voting on the next month's project. We have the results.
And should we get them to the people, or should we wait?
Well,
do you want to do it now?
We can reveal the winner now, just because
okay.
I mean, we won't actually start working on this card until the next episode. But
all right.
Yeah, Emmy, take it away.
So, the winner, this time by a much bigger margin than last time, is Shini Fei, Shedmir's second. The beautiful Naya with the weird mana cost that I'm not willing to even read. That's a 3-mana 3/3 Elf Druid. That whenever you would create one or more tokens, instead create that many 2/2 cats or 3/1 2/2 cats with haste or 3/1 dogs with vigilance. And this is the clear winner, of course, because who doesn't love cats and dogs? That's the only reason I can, that's why it won.
Is that why?
That's why I won. I'm not taking it any other way.
Yeah, Ginny Fey just had overwhelming support, 46% of the vote. We had a big turnout this time.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to start on Monday. We'll be working on Ginny Fey throughout the month. It's a very open-ended card. I mean, basically anything that makes tokens potentially interacts with Ginny Fey, and there are thousands of cards.
Yeah, the fact it doesn't say creature tokens just opens a huge possibility paradigm, right?
Yeah.
In the Discord, people are already throwing theories around and they're just getting crazy by the minute.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awesome choice, first of all, so kudos to everyone who voted for it. I think we're going to have a fun month ahead. There's a lot to do with this card, and we're definitely going to need multiple weeks to unpack it all.
Exactly.
So that's coming up on our next episode. Again, if you want to get in on the action, come brew with us. Patreon.com/Faithless Brewing. That's where you can sign up, and we'd love to see you there. All right, Emmy, B&R,
Yes.
News of the Week. What happened? Walk me through this.
From the beginnings of our new week. So first of all, I think we just mentioned the most important part. All of a sudden, Tuesday morning, no previous announcement, no previous anything, ban and restricted announcements. The real format getting here is Pioneer, and then a lot of ballsy claims by Wizards regarding the other formats that a lot of people will start debates.
Yeah, I mean, I was so taken aback by the Pioneer banning that I didn't even realize at first that they'd also included like a health check for every other format, which is kind of nice. I mean, it gives us something to sink our teeth into, something to worry about.
I mean, the fact they're now doing bans without previous announcement means these healthy checks are now worth a lot more, because now we at least know what to be feared of. Like, if they said I'm just talking out of my ass, in Finmodern they said, we're really looking closely at Omnath, and they are banning out of nowhere, then my Omnaths are in risk. But if they say everything is alright, I know at least I have a few more months or a few extra expansions before something goes out of hand.
True. So the new ban cadence, if we can call it that, seems to be out of the blue announcement taking immediate effect, right? This announcement was posted on June 7th. I did not see any leaks or spoilers about it. Took effect immediately on June 7th. If you're in a league with a card, you just get kicked out, get your money back.
Really?
If you were going to a tournament this weekend, hoping to take it down with your Winota deck or your Izzet Prowess, Izzet Phoenix, you got to go back to the drawing board.
That has to be devastating. Already paying for a tournament, and all of a sudden they're saying, you know, your best deck, it's out. You're out.
Was there any warning for this? I mean, there is now a corresponding format on Arena called Explorer, which is all of the Pioneer legal cards that are on the Arena client. A true to tabletop format. They banned Winota there first, just because, well, why? Why did they do it? Because it was too powerful? Sort of. Because it felt bad? Yes, I think that's a big part of it. So they said it's going to be banned in Explorer, but not in Real Pioneer. And here we are 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, banned in Real Pioneer.
So, I think I don't tend to agree with Saffron Olive in a lot of his comments regarding the meta and the game itself, but all of a sudden, he actually said something I actually could stand behind, which was, he was talking about any single aggro deck you are playing in Selesnya, Naya, any sort of combination that included Boros or just creature aggro was a bad Winota. Everything was a bad Winota, unless it was Winota itself. So you always feel like you are playing underpowered stuff due to a sheer power Winota brought to the deck itself. Why were you playing a creature aggro without Winota? You're just nerfing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that. Well, since we're on the subject, let's just take a look at the official declaration. I believe this is from Michael Majors and Ian Duke.
Yes.
On the Wizards play design team. Alright, as noted before, we want Pioneer to provide as diverse an experience as possible, blah blah blah. Quoting here. Okay, here we go. Over time, it has become clear that Naya Winota is suppressing diversity, as its power and consistency have drastically reduced incentives to play other linear creature-based strategies. Oh, they read Saffron Olive. Or perhaps the other way around. Not only is it a resilient mid-range deck that can leverage many of the powerful mana creatures available in the format, but its explosive draws involving the deck's namesake, Winota, can create unassailable battlefield states as quickly as turn 3. Okay, so that's like philosophical reasoning, right? Exactly like you were just saying, Emmy. What they didn't say in there was that it was winning too much. They just said it's suppressing diversity. It is powerful and consistent.
It says exactly that below.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm putting on my conspiracy hat here. So then the next paragraph says, due to its large metagame share, how large? They don't say. High win rate, how high? We don't know. They don't say that either. and ability to create frustrating removal check gameplay. Did they say that before? I mean, is this something new? For those 3 reasons, Winota is banned in Pioneer. So why do I mention the high win rate? Well, I mean, die-hard Pioneer players point out immediately that Winota, although being among the best decks, or possibly one of the top 2 best decks alongside Rakdos midrange, this varies week to week, and it hasn't been doing that well in the recent Pioneer challenges. Like, it wasn't in the top 8s the last 2 weeks, except maybe 1 copy. And I'm kind of curious, kind of suspicious that they did not actually cite a win rate for the deck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care why they banned it, because I just agree with the first part. Like, maybe just anti-tinfoil, but even if there's a tinfoil reason behind it, I agree with it, so I have no reason to fight it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Like, I think the first part was enough, and maybe they just went for the second part to make sure everybody was on board.
Talk to me about this phrase, frustrating removal check gameplay. So removal check meaning you play a card that it's so powerful that if the opponent has removal, everything's fine. But if they don't have removal, if they fail the removal check, yeah, it's over.
It's a faux check. It's like, because Pioneer is more fair, we have the removal check, while in Legacy we have the force check.
Exactly. The phone check, perhaps.
The phone check. Just to harm Dan.
Okay, so we understand that Winota is a removal check. You cast it, if they don't have removal immediately, the trigger just happens, and suddenly you're facing down Tovolar's Huntmaster, possibly that plus more stuff. It's all over. The exact same thing I hear people saying this about Greasefang and Parhelion, both in Pioneer and in Explorer, right? It's a frustrating card because it's so swingy. Now, no one is saying that Greasefang is winning too much, but it has almost the exact same gameplay where, like, you cast the card, go to combat. If the opponent has removal, they're totally fine. If they don't, they're dead.
I think the difference is Greasefang requires the setup of being vulnerable to graveyard, while also needing to have done something previously besides casting creatures. All Winota has to do is put creatures on the board, while Greasefang actually has to find a way to find the Parhelion, put it on the graveyard, and then get the Greasefang check. Winota only needs to cast creatures, Winota check.
Okay, so maybe Greasefang does have frustrating removal check gameplay, but Greasefang does not have high win rate or large metagame share right now.
Exactly. Like, it might be annoying to have to deal with a Greasefang, but the fact they have to do... Like, you don't have to deal with a Greasefang if all they have is a Greasefang. You need to deal with the Greasefang if they have the Greasefang and the Parhelion in the graveyard.
Okay, so that's Winota. Now we got to get to the big one. Expressive Iteration. Expressive Iteration has been a multi-format all-star, I'm quoting again, since its release in Strixhaven's School of Mages, a famously overpowered set. It has fueled a variety of highly successful Izzet strategies in Pioneer by providing card selection and card advantage at a much higher rate than what is available to other decks, making it extremely difficult for other strategies to engage them in wars of attrition. Okay, so Expressive Iteration is good. We know that. The next paragraph. Although we recognize that there are several other powerful card draw spells in the format, notably Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time, we currently believe that delve spells contribute to blue decks in Pioneer having a unique identity among Eternal formats. As Pioneer's card pool has fewer strong cantrips and no fetch lands, we're hoping many delve cards can continue to be a part of the format at a more moderate power level compared to how they would play in other non-rotating formats. Alright, so that's why Expressive Iteration, but not Treasure Cruise or Dig Through Time, is the card targeted here. So then the final summary: to lower the win rate of the wide variety of Izzet decks and bring them further in line with other strategies in the format, while maintaining what makes them special in Pioneer, Expressive Iteration is banned.
I think they did what they have to, even if it's not correct. Like, the only reason you have nowadays to play Pioneer, if you like that sort of spellslinger Izzet sort of decks, is because you have access to the powerful delve spells. If not, you're just playing a power down version of the deck in another format. Like, it's attractive.
I mean, do you actually believe that though? Like, that's like saying Pioneer is just a watered down modern, but I think that's no longer true.
I'm saying it's not a watered down modern because of cards like the Tell Spells.
Yeah, okay.
I think those are the cards that make it not a powered down modern.
I see. Yeah, I was just thinking that the powered down modern argument just no longer holds water anymore because people are sick of how powerful modern is. Modern has its own problems. I think people are upset that they seem to consider modern healthy, but that's a separate topic, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, I see from that, but I mean, they're consistent. Maybe I expressed myself incorrectly. I'm not saying they are correct, I'm saying they are consistent. If they consider modern to be healthy, then the point of view of they having to separate Pioneer due to specific cards makes sense in order for it to not be watered down modern.
Gotcha.
Okay. So they're consistent with their plan, which I think it's worth its own merit, regardless of if I consider some decisions are correct or not. Consistency is at least appreciated because we know what they have in their mind.
So do you believe that Treasure Cruise is a more powerful card than Expressive Iteration?
I think Treasure Cruise is a more powerful card, but I'm not sure in the... I think banning Treasure Cruise or Dig Through Time, rather, you have to ban both because if you keep one, they play just the one you left. But those two cards are more powerful than Expressive Iteration. However, I agree that the format didn't need to shake down so much, right? Banning Winota is already enough of a shakedown to the format that's going to cause a lot of changes. I'm not sure if they needed to make so many changes. I only fear the power of Lotus combo now. That we know the Overlords are not keeping it in check.
Yeah, so we'll get into that in a second, because David has left us some nice little notes, some prognostications on what he thinks will happen to Pioneer. But before we shift to that, let's just dig into the heart of the question here. Expressive Iteration, I mean, they're calling this a multi-format all-star. I think that's just objectively true. I'm somewhat persuaded by the people who say that Expressive Iteration is more powerful than Treasure Cruise. It feels worse. I don't know why, but like Treasure Cruise is like a big event, right? You see the person, like they start counting their graveyard, like there's a pause on Magic Online where they're like making sure the mana cost is just right, resolve it, put it on the stack, and like, you know, it's very cathartic, the resolving of a Treasure Cruise. Yes, it feels like you're losing now, but you also feel like, I could have prevented this, right? They earned it. They went through all this trouble to get their 3 cards. Whereas Expressive Iteration, they just peel it off the top, cast it, and you just have this sinking feeling like, oh god, I'm losing now. Like, I was fine a minute ago, and now that they've drawn Expressive Iteration, I'm just losing.
I mean, you're also losing if your opponent is casting Treasure Cruise. Regardless if they pay 1 or 3.
I mean, I am, but I feel like it's my fault if I lose to Treasure Cruise. Whereas it's not my fault if I lose to Expressive Iteration, because they priced this as like a fair standard card. I mean, the other part of this is that a lot of people who play Izzet would say they would play 5 or 6 copies of Expressive Iteration, and they sometimes play 3 or even 2 copies of Treasure Cruise.
I mean,
like,
Treasure Cruise
which one is more important effect? Like, Iteration is the glue, and Treasure Cruise is like the big finish.
The problem is Treasure Cruise has there's a term for this in English. When the second copy is worse than the first one, diminishing returns.
Yes.
The first copy will always cost 1, the second one not so much. Expressive Iteration will always cost 2. So finding multiple iterations is better than finding multiple Treasure Cruise, but the first Treasure Cruise is better than the first Expressive Iteration.
Right, so, I mean, if the question is which one is more powerful, maybe powerful is not the right word, which one is more important to the deck? I feel like Iteration is a much more important card.
Maybe because of the lack of efficient cantrips and fetchlands, but I think in the long term, like the bigger the format gets, the more powerful the spells always get, right?
I mean, we've been saying that for years and it hasn't happened yet.
It's been years?
Pioneer's been around for like 2 years, right?
Wait, what? Wasn't it more like this year? During the quarantine? Am I going to say?
I mean, we keep expecting the Treasure Cruise Dig Through Time ban, We were expecting that in week one. We were like there for the birth of Pioneer, and it just didn't happen. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And it's just wild to see decks like trying out Temporal Trespass instead of Treasure Cruise. The deck can only play so many Delve spells, but the deck can play at least 4, possibly more expressive iteration effects. So I mean, I do feel like this is going to hurt the Izzet decks a lot more than the Delve spells will.
Maybe you're right, but there's also the fact that in order to ban the Delve spells, you have to ban both, right? Like keeping one and without the other is almost the same.
I mean, maybe, but I guess they're like not even going to entertain that right now. So
yeah,
we just have to make do with what they've done. Some people that I saw on Twitter were saying, like, man, it just feels really bad to them that a mid-range card, like Expressive Iteration, quote-unquote a mid-range card, would get the ban, because they don't want mid-range to be more consistent, and, like, you know, why would you ban this? Like, they didn't feel like it's the kind of card that could ever be ban-worthy. It's just powerful, but it's not unfair.
I think this is a chat I had a few days ago regarding Nothing Modern. You can always ban the engine or the payoff, right? And Wizards always tries to ban the engine first. You have Altar of Dimension Breach from Below in the Hoga case. They try to never aim for the head. They don't always ban the case. They don't go for the face. They don't go for the KCI first. They try to go for enablers in the meanwhile. They don't go for Twin. They try to nerf on the way. They don't go for Hogak. They go for enablers. They try to not kill decks, they try to kill what makes it clock.
Right, take out the consistency tools, take out the ancient stirrings, that kind of thing.
They try to go for the decks, and if that doesn't work, they aim for the head.
Except that they didn't ban ancient stirrings.
I know, but they didn't ban Lotus, they ban Reach, and they didn't ban. In the case here, what do you kill out of the Izzet decks? What would be the head of the Izzet decks? They didn't have any, so you just shoot at one of the many legs and hope it falls down a bit.
Yeah, so if you don't play Pioneer a lot, you might be wondering what is this core that we're talking about. The spells core is 4 Consider, 4 Opt, 4 Expressive Iteration, and then depending on what flavor of Izzet there is, it might be 4 pieces of the puzzle if they're in a Phoenix style deck. Sometimes Chart Course. Now, before Expressive Iteration was printed, you had to play stuff like Strategic Planning, which is not very good, right?
Yeah.
If you were in a Prowess deck, you had to rely on Light Up the Stage, and I guess you could try Reckless Impulse now if you were really hoping to replace Expressive Iteration. But yeah, those are the cards, the cheap cantrip or card draw effects that provide velocity, flow, what was sometimes called a Xerox style strategy. And then because your deck has all these spells in it, you can play some number of spell payoffs, whether that's a creature like Arclight Phoenix or Thing of the Ice, or now Ledger Shredder, or whether that's a Delve spell like Treasure Cruise or Dig Through Time, or Temporal Trespass. And there's just like too many options on the payoff side. Like, unless like one of the payoffs is really, really egregiously powerful, you can't just cut off one of the payoffs. You have to go for the enablers.
Yeah. And in the case of Winota, they had to go for the head, because what do you kill? Voice of Resurgence, Eldritch Evolution, a Goblin, the 7-mana human, the 6-mana Grave Tyrant that's green. Like, ignoring Winota, everything else is ranging from bad to meh.
I mean, the enabler there would be Elvish Mystic. If you really felt like, you know, green creature decks were too powerful, you could take out an Elvish Mystic.
The problem
you could take out one of the blue cantrips, and if you wanted to like really nerf these, you could take out Consider. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you should.
No, but they went for the banning that was medium against Izzet decks, and they had to go for the head in the case of Winota, because anything you ban that isn't Winota is hitting a lot of other decks that do not deserve it and aren't really killing the Winota deck.
All right. Well, whether these bans were justified or not, the biggest question is, what now, right? Where does Pioneer go from here? For this, we're going to consult our Pioneer Sage, our Pioneer Guru. He's not with us in the flesh, but he's with us in spirit. We'll have a little seance, summon the wisdom of David Robertson, and see what he thinks about the format. So, Emmy, I'm going to turn over to you here.
Yes. So, Like, I have been really trying to get into the mind of David, and I'm glad I had like really similar concepts. Like we have the first PTQ comings here in a few weeks, and I decided exactly the same deck that David is saying will be likely the best. So I'm pretty happy that we share most, if not all, the ideas. And to start with, the first phrase from David, we know that was the keycard of the deck. There's nothing left there. So Winota is dead. Empty your cyber slots. You're not facing that archetype ever again.
So you're not persuaded by the Winota players who point out that, hey, we win a lot of games without Winota.
I had that chat with some people. I was like, yeah, and Yawgmoth wins a lot of games in Modern with 2-mana 2/1s. The problem is those 2-mana 2/1s win the game because your opponent is holding up a removal for the win con, not because they are good. It's because your opponent had to mulligan from removal to Winota, and they have to use that removal on Winota or lose the game. It's not like they don't have the removal. They are saving it for what matters.
Alright, so Winota as a deck is gone. Naya midrange, Naya creature aggro, for now, is completely gone.
I think so. I don't think we will ever see... Maybe another Naya Celestia aggro deck will resurge from the ashes, but I don't think it's like this nearby, not even close to the same. The combo-ish aspect of Winota in between quotes was a true threat. The removal check or death.
Yeah, and speaking of removal check, David has a note here that for the rest of us, non-Winota players, this will change the removal that we put in our sideboards, right? There were a lot of specialty cards like Rending Volley, like Ray of Enfeeblement, Red Cap Melee, that were being played specifically because they dealt 4 damage to Winota at instant speed. And now that Winota is gone, you can change, play Abrupt Decay instead, for example.
Exactly. After that, he says the complete opposite for Izzet Xerox leagues that existed before Consider Iteration, that just banning Iteration won't eliminate them, just make them a bit worse. Cards like Dan mentioned, Reckless Impulse can just straight up replace Expressive Iteration, Chatacor's Izzet Charm, and the fact that Winota is no more means that TT is likely no more. So goodbye to the TTs and embrace our Overlord, the Ledger likely, because it's better in practically all matchups that run Winota.
Yeah, Thing of the Ice has not been that prevalent lately, whereas Ledger Shredder just keeps seeing more and more play. So if there's not like a creature-based aggro deck, then there's no longer any reason to play Thing of the Ice. So now we're going to be seeing a lot more Ledger Shredders in the Arclight Phoenix decks. And I mean, if Prowess continues to be good enough, I mean, David is saying he thinks it will be, that Reckless Impulse is going to be enough, then yeah, Izzet should survive, which would be a success from, I think, the perspective of play design. Successful banning.
Yeah. Finally, the third deck, talking about what is used to be, like the triad of best decks in Pioneer used to be Winota, Izzet, Lotus, and Lotus didn't get a single card touched. Not only that, but Winota was the predator of Lotus, right? Like, Winota just destroyed that deck?
I believe so. I mean, I never played that matchup myself, but I can imagine that a fast clock plus occasional disruption is more than enough to just crush Lotus Field.
So I expect a lot of Lotus Field coming for the upcoming weeks, and I wouldn't play any deck that doesn't have at least a decent matchup or a good sideboard line against it.
Okay.
Which leads to my new favorite deck in the format, and has nothing, absolutely no correlation of any sort with the fact it's the Yorion deck in the format. Whatsoever. No correlation. So now that we have all agreed that there is no correlation with the fact that Yorion is involved with whatever I'm about to say, Azorius Control got a huge power up due to this because it has not a single card touch and it has a pretty good Lotus matchup.
They gotta ban Yorion next, just to free us from the madness.
Just to stop me.
Please don't let Yorion be the best deck in Pioneer.
Yes, yoink.
So 80 card blue-white control.
Yes.
Why 80 cards? Just because,
Because it's free.
If blue-white is the best deck, might as well start with an extra 4 or 5.
Extra 4/5 and the deck plays Summon of the Seas and Wandering Emperor. I'm a simple man. I'm a simple guy.
And for those who have not seen this interaction, when you blink the Wandering Emperor with your Yorion, it comes back on your end step and you can then activate again.
Yeah, so it's pretty common something like on your opponent's end step, make a knight, into your turn, make a knight, link with Yorion, exile a creature, or make a third knight.
Yeah, just make sure you have a stop step in your end step if you're on Magic Online.
Yes.
Alright, so Lotus Field trending up, Blue-White trending up. Also, we think Blue-White is somewhat favorable against Lotus, just has a lot of counter magic.
Lotus really struggles against one or two counter spells. It's enough to really throw you off for a few turns, and then you rely on your combo staples such as the 6 mana Thought Distortion.
Yes.
To get you ahead in the games.
Alright, so if we're expecting more Lotus and Blue-White, where does that leave the rest of the format?
Well, if we expect more Lotus and more Azorius, unlike in Modern where we have cards like Solitude and Prismatic Ending, we don't have that many efficient removals in Azorius colors here, so Mono Red can't really go below both of these decks, just rush them out. Which means Mono Red might be making a bit of a comeback according to David.
Okay, yeah, I mean Mono Red plays Eidolon of the Great Revel, so that's pretty good against Lotus. Not amazing, but pretty good. It's got plenty of value in its lands that tends to be important against a blue-white deck, because they will sweep the board frequently.
Yeah. And that means that I don't like Burn, so I really hope it doesn't, but likely you're going to start seeing a lot more of those aggressive, just mono red, and hoping they line up well against the meta.
Yeah, it's an open question of, like, will people start to play less removal if they feel like they don't need as much because Winota is gone? Does that mean you can connect more often with your prowess creatures, or if you want to play like Heroic or something, is that just going to go run rampant?
I don't think people will play less removals, they will just adapt the quality of removal they are playing, right? Because now you don't need Feral Push, you can just play Change Your Rooks or Portable Hole. Now, your removal doesn't have to be able to remove a 4-mana creature at instant speed.
Okay, so Mono Red might be on the upswing as a counter to Lotus and Blue-White. David has a note here that Spirits falls into the same category. It's fast, it's disruptive. It's not as fast, but it's more disruptive.
Yeah.
The Snow Mono Blue version has been kind of a quiet contender, and then also Blue-White or the more traditional Bant. What about Rakdos Midrange? A deck that people had been calling one of the top 2 decks in the last couple weeks.
The biggest problem with Rakdos is the fact that creatures are gonna stop being as played, right? Like Rakdos was really good against Winota and it has lost its main matchup. It's still gonna do pretty great against Mono Red or Spirits, but it's gonna struggle with the opposite. Rakdos Mono Removal really struggles against an end-step Wandering Emperor into a 5-mana Teferi.
Yeah, I mean, you're lucky if you can remove those at all, and if you do, you're removing them at a great deficit to yourself.
Exactly. So I think it's gonna take a huge hit from the change in the meta as Azorius just gets bigger and Lotus gets a bigger hold of the meta and is able to just dedicate more spots to fighting that sort of strategy instead of Winota.
Alright, so a couple layers deep now, we raise the possibility that people will stop playing as much cheap removal. This is something that David has wondered about too. And he's thinking, if that happens, well then what? Can we actually get away with playing like a Llanowar Elvish Mystic deck? And if so, does that mean something like Mono Green?
Yeah.
Like the Mono Green Devotion deck.
Maybe those decks can come back. Also the mention of Embercleave in Gruul decks, just because people aren't gonna have as much instant speed removal. Embercleave is such a fun card. It's also terrifying if you only have sorcery speed removal.
So that would be like a pure speed list. Red-green beats with Embercleave. Green is more like, I guess, the Planeswalker Devotion style decks with, Kiora, sometimes Storm the Festival. I won't say they struggled against Winota, but they were never really happy to get paired against Winota because that comes down to die rolls so much. When you can't disrupt them, you just sort of hope that you're going first and that you don't get dunked on by the Winota before you get a chance to set up. So I'm sure that the mono green players are happy to see Winota gone.
Oh, of course. Just because even if the matchup felt favorable, Winota is just so powerful that you always felt like you were gonna lose to just Winota win Winota, right? Like turn 1 creature, turn 1 mana draw, turn 2 any creature, turn 3 Winota, just if you survive you're lucky. And even if you survive, you're just so far behind it's unsurmountable.
Finally, we have a note here from David about some lesser played decks that fall into the mid-range or mid-range pile camps. For example, 4-color Omnath, Grixis, or Jeskai mid-range, maybe like Fires of Invention. These are decks that
Took a huge hit.
Yeah, I mean, if they played Expressive Iteration before, that was almost certainly their best card by a huge margin. And having that knocked out from under them when they were already barely playable to begin with, these are the kind of decks where you get those tweets being like, man, I guess mid-range is just not allowed to exist, huh? But, I mean, your deck was always pretty bad, so...
It just went from fringe to unplayable at the speed of light.
Right, so like, yeah, okay, now you have no real incentive to be in the Izzet colors, so like, does Sultai become attractive again? Maybe. Does Narset become better? I mean, I feel like Narset is a great card against Blue, White, and Lotus, so something like our Narset Bring to Light deck might be good again, whereas Narset was terrible against any kind of creature deck.
Narset is bad against anything that plays a single creature. It's just automatic, you just look at both deck lists and be like, this is gonna be insane, or this is gonna be terrible at just looking at the creature count.
And a final note from David here about the kind of removal you might be incentivized to play. He says that cheap sorcery speed removal is slightly more attractive now. Think of Portable Hole, think of Chain to the Rocks. Turning on Fatal Push is less important. It was never easy to do in Pioneer to begin with, but you no longer have to be holding that blood token plus an extra mana up in fear every turn in case the Winota comes down. Greasefang is still out there, so you still want like some ability to play at instant speed with your removal, but you can get away with maybe more sorcery speed stuff.
Yeah. Also, he gave us a small tier list, so best guess for tier 1s, we have, as was mentioned, Azorius Control, Lotus, Mono Red, Spirits, and Mono Green. The best guess for tier 2, we have the new Xerox Nerf deck list, Rakdos Removal, Nib Mizzet, and Greasefang. And finally, because of course David is gonna have a comment like this one, because he has been too nice for the whole text. For your information, this opens zero space for whatever garbage people were upset they were losing with before. The rest of the metagame is still going to farm you.
Yeah.
Because he was getting a tad too nice and just had to let his spirit free at the end.
Yeah. The David seance ends as we knew it had to end.
We were informed that stop playing garbage is not gonna work even after the bans.
So David is predicting that Izzet falls down to tier 2 alongside Rakdos, because Rakdos does not have as much to prey on, and he's predicting both Lotus, Spirits, Mono Green, and Blue White all ascending to the top tier. I mean, that would be a meaningful shift in Pioneer. That being said, like, the format was already churning. I felt like I had a pretty healthy churn before. We haven't seen the numbers, so we're just going to have to take Wizards' word for it that this is for the best for Pioneer. But, I mean, this is the featured format in the first round of regional championship qualifiers. I think a lot of the qualifiers are going to be featuring Pioneer, and we know that will be the format for the national championships as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we knew Samban was gonna come, like this wasn't the format it was going to be played at the Pro Tour. We just were hoping to see what was gonna change.
Any comments, Morde, on the Modern health check? We got like 4 sentences on Modern.
Yeah, in Modern we got like a tiny paragraph that, at least for me, I'm quite happy with. They just went ahead and said, quite literally, everything is fine in more words. The Modern metagame continues to show greatly playstyle diversity, with Aggro, Combo, Tempo, and Control, and Ramp represented in 10 most played decks, which is true. We have Amulet Titan, Tron, Burn, 4-color midrange, and Murktide representing each of them alongside other decks. The most played decks is that Murktide represents about 10% of the Magic Online metagame and hovers around a 50% win rate. The top decks show strengths and weaknesses against each other, and there looks to be plenty of room for less popular rogue decks to be successful. I think all in all they are right. They are disregarding how much people hate playing against Yorion decks, and I don't know why people hate playing so much against Yorion decks.
I think it's because the Yorion deck has so many of the cards from the last 2 years that like are emblematic of people's frustrations with Modern.
Okay.
You can kind of compartmentalize them so that any particular archetype only plays like 3 outrageous MH2 cards. But then you look at the Urian decks and it's like all of them are here. It's like, what the heck, you know? There's no synergy. It's just like powerful card, overpowered card, too generous card.
Yeah, I guess it can be that. Like, people complain so much about Urion because they like complaining, but I agree with what they're saying right now. But the format is diverse enough, at least in my point of view. Like, in my last 3 leagues, I have played literally around... I played against 3 Neoforms in my last 3 leagues.
What?
3 Neoforms, a Storm player, an Amnosium player, a Merfolk player, a Goblins player, 2 humans in my last 3-4 leagues. None of that is a tier 1 deck, and it has been approximately 50% of my matchups. And then I have played the Mirror, Murktide, Amulet, Grixis Shadow, Grixis Arcanist, that's somehow in the search. So, I think people just remember the worst parts about what they face, and people just love complaining. I think we have said that before. But I think Modern is in a pretty good spot.
I think as long as a huge percentage of the Modern player base is willing to play decks like the ones you mentioned, whether because they don't want to buy a new deck or they just, they enjoy playing that particular strategy. Those decks are not in the top tier, they're not even in the second tier, but they're out there. I mean, the field at large has always been, the biggest slice of the Modern metagame pie. So that will always be true, even when there's like a broken deck.
Yeah.
But you can't pinpoint a broken deck right now, and the fact that they're calling out Murktide at 10% meta share, 50% win rate, is like the one to have their eye on. Like,
I think people also the argument I saw the most was people saying that for color control, if you sum up for color control and elementals and everything together, has like a 15%. But then you are considering the builds that have Ring to Light, the builds that play Cavern of Souls, and the builds that play Ragavan as the same deck. Because people see Yorion plus Abundant Growth and just assume it's the same, but I don't agree.
All right. So that's the B&R. Any final thoughts on it?
I think we will see a new B&R in the next month or two, regarding mostly maybe Pioneer again even.
Oh.
I think maybe we have I think maybe either Monogreen or Lotus Bridge might have just escaped a bit too much. I'm not sure, I'm not an expert, but based on what I have seen of the format before, maybe if there aren't enough Astorius players or such to control the Lotus, maybe it just gets out of hand.
I don't think anyone enjoys playing against Lotus Field combo, so if that banning happens...
And that's a huge part out of it.
Yeah, there would be something in that hypothetical B&R about an unfun play experience.
Exactly. Like, people, it's the same as KCI. Even if it's not broken, people hate it so much, it's more prone to get banned.
There are a handful of cards in Pioneer that feel like they're from a different era of Magic. Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, Thoughtseize, Treasure Cruise, Dig Through Time. These are the 4 that stand out right away as like, wow, that's legal? Like, are you sure? Yeah. Nykthos is probably doing the best of those right now. Well, I guess, assuming that Expressive Iteration ban has its intended effect of knocking the blue decks down a little bit.
I think it will.
Nykthos would be the one, maybe perhaps the next one to like roar its head. Because these green decks are getting better and better.
Yeah, exactly. And most of these people are not playing a lot of removal nowadays. If the number of instant speed removal goes down and mono green decks are allowed to grow, maybe Nykthos is the one to get the next bullet.
All right, well, we will, of course, keep you apprised of any developments on that front. We'll be refreshing the Wizards website every day now in fear of the next ban. But until then, we have other brewing business to turn our attention to. So, from overpowered cards to decks that are barely playable, cruising to another 3-2 finish.
Aggressively medium
decks. We're going to pivot now to our flashback segment and tell you a little bit about our testing results with last week's card, which was Extraction Specialist. Extraction Specialist, 2 and a white, human rogue, 3/2 lifelink. When it enters a battlefield, return target creature with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature can't attack or block for as long as you control Extraction Specialist. So we like this card. I mean, we had a lot of nice things to say about it if you listened to our episode from Monday. Compares favorably to Renegade Rallier, we hoped.
The fact it has lifelink is pretty big, the fact it's non-conditional on Revolt is pretty big, and the can't attack or block tends to not be as relevant in most scenarios.
Yeah.
So that means the card tends to be extremely tempo positive play, and worst case scenario, 3 mana 3/2 lifelink, it's worth like 2 mana. Or 2.5, so it's not like if the trigger fails or whatever, you're just out of the game.
Yeah, so we imagined a lot of scenarios where, a fully powered extraction specialist gives you that 2.5 mana creature plus a valuable 2-drop, and it's just like, oh, that's so good. We also talked about different ways to choose 2-drops that don't need to attack and block to affect the battlefield. On that note, maybe we can go to Emmy first. You are taking these principles, applying them to Modern, and refining a little bit some of the
weaknesses as to
some of the Esper concepts that we talked about a couple of weeks back.
Exactly. So I fell in love with Raffine. I actually consider Raffine a good card, with the only problem being its mana cost. Which of course leads me to play a deck with Raffine, a lot of 2-drops, which of course means if I have efficient 2-drops that none of them want to attack, I want to play Extraction Specialist. That was like my line of thought as I came around with this Esper Hatebears Vial deck. So the 2-drops in this deck are Charming Prince, Talia, Dark Confidant, and Tight Scholar, and the 1-drops are Esper Sentinel and Thraben Inspector. None of them want to ever attack or block. Maybe Thraben Inspector wants to block. Other than that, you don't even care about what happens to them. So you just want them. You are playing 2 mana for practically permanents that have no attack until you need to close the game. You just want their static effects. Not only that, it's really common for you to ephemerate your Extraction Specialist, so you just get a new creature and the first one can attack and actually pressure the opponent. So I took this new league for a spin. First time I got a 3/2, now I got another 3/2 with Dark Confidant, which, quoting Dan, was at least inevitable. Dark Confidant seems pretty good, famous last words. Dark Confidant seems good here, declares mana about to go 3/2. That's from Dan as we were talking about the deck, and 2 hours later I got a 3/2.
I mean, it does seem good here, right?
It was great.
It's a high value target, a removal check target.
The one time it hit a Solitude and I took 5, I was fine because I got a Solitude. So I was like, I'm willing to take this trade.
Yeah, so you just threw him in, full playset of Dark Confidants, even though you have 4 Solitude, 4 Grief, and a bunch of 3-drops. No fear, just flip the top card, put it in your hand.
Yeah, no fear, just pray for it and hope it works. The deck worked, the deck felt quite good. The only problem with the deck is I cannot find Raffine comfortably enough. Like, if I could find more Raffines, like, the deck relies a lot of it being its top end. Like, the times you just go turn 1 Esper Sentinel into turn 2 Tide Hollow into turn 3 Raffine, attack, get a 3/3 Esper Sentinel, you feel like the king of the world.
Well, would you consider just cutting 20 cards so you could play a normal 60-card deck like the rest of us, and then you would draw Raffine more often?
Whoa. 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 Slow down, cowboy. Whoa.
I mean,
whoa. We're playing with fire, mate.
Just preparing for the inevitable Yorian ban.
I'm out of this, bye. I'm out of the podcast, everybody. That's the last you have seen of Morde. Have a nice night. But maybe that's the correct play, but you're not gonna make me do it. So if anybody wants to actually play this without Yorion, just remove the Grief, remove 2 Ephemerates. I can even take a Watcher remove. I have already in my mind what I should do. I don't have the strength to do it. Remove 7 lands, remove 4 Grief, that's 11, remove 1 Thraben Inspector, that's 12, 1 Thalia, 13, 2 Strangler, 1 thing, and you're done. It's pretty easy. I don't have the strength to do it, I hope you do.
Would Extraction Specialist survive in this new version?
Yeah, Extraction Specialist as a 2-off has been extremely useful because, especially with the Vial on 3, once you sideboard both of your more powerful Hatebears like Meddling Mage, holding a Vial on 3 that's an Extraction Specialist is devastating.
So you felt like every time you drew this, you're like, this is a powerful card.
Yeah.
This is going to do something good for me.
Yeah. And because you're playing... So this deck doesn't fill its own graveyard, but it's playing must-die creatures. Esper, Sentinel, Talia, Dark Confidant, and Tide Hollow are must-kill on sides. Which means you are gonna have 2-mana creatures in your graveyard for your Extraction Specialist 99% of the time, because if not, your opponent is not playing the game. Or you have a live Dark Confidant, which is a worthy trade-off.
Well, that's an important lesson, right? So you don't need to actually play any dedicated cards to fill up the graveyard. The only card that can even do that here is Raffine, a card we do like, right? The Connive can put something in the graveyard, but you're relying on your opponent to do that work for you, or for them to just die because they left a Thalia and an Esper Sentinel in play.
Yeah. So, and more often than not, I don't think I have ever gotten a Talia to survive more than 1 or 2 turns. Or a Dark Confidant, or a Tide Hollow especially just tends to trip on itself and die. The fact it's also an artifact. So the fact it's also an artifact has gotten it killed by Boseiju one too many times.
Interesting.
That's worth saying. I lost a game against Amulet because I was like, okay, he has 2 cards in hand. I just take the removal if they have removal, take the Titan if not, and all it's cool. All of a sudden, I see their hand, Boseiju plus Titan, proceed to cry into oblivion.
So it seemed like we actually like how this deck is built. We like what it's trying to do. It does play Dark Confidant, so it can never do better than 3 and 2.
It's bound to a 32.
This is the equivalent of a 5-0.
It's the Dark Confidant 5-0. It used to be the Shun 5-0, but now it's the Dark Confidant 5-0.
But if you have a playset of Confidants, the original Ragavan, we might call it.
It's so far away. It's like saying Shakalpap is the original Ragavan. I think it's the same distance.
Well, if you're looking for a home for your Dark Confidants, I mean, this deck looks fun. A fun way to go 3 and 2 over and over and over again.
Bound to the 3-2s.
Speaking of which, we'll go to our next deck here with Extraction Specialist, which takes us a Pioneer, but it is also playing a full playset of Raffine Scheming Seer. This is David's list, black-white aggro, splashing just for Raffine, and this is actually the same concept that we talked about a couple weeks back, but David liked it a lot. I mean, he liked it so much, he feels like he's right on the cusp of a powerful, playable build.
I advise everyone to try Raffine. Raffine is shockingly powerful. Like, it doesn't deserve to be as powerful as it is. I'm not being ironic. I'm surprised by how useful that card has been every single time it has touched the board with 1 or 2 creatures on board.
Yeah, I agree. This list will be familiar to listeners. It's 4 Raffine, 4 Archfiend Vessel, 4 Extraction Specialist. That power combo of Extraction Specialist bringing back the Archfiend Vessel, immediately getting the demon that's free to attack and block is very attractive. Now, you have to fill the deck out with other stuff, and this is where it starts to get a little bit less powerful. Raffine's Informant, Blood-Soaked Champion, Acquisitions Expert, Luminarch Aspirant, 4 Thalia Guardian of Thraben. We're choosing cards that add to the battlefield, so we're sort of an aggro deck, you know, Raffine coming down and immediately having creatures already in play so you can attack and connive once or twice is quite powerful. But, I mean, if you draw the wrong combination of these cards, you kind of have an anemic curve of like 2-1 into 2-1. Just like, hope you're not dead. So, this is what David tested, right? He changed around a few of the last slots trying to get the exact right numbers of like fatal pushes. The Thought Seizes are no longer in the main deck. We're playing Thalia instead, as we talked about last week. He played 2 leagues with this. He got a 3-2 and another 3-2. So we're cruising in that 3-2 lane. Extraction Specialist, it's a 3-2 that can't go any better than 3-2. But, I mean, here we are, right?
Is it the Raffine curse? Is it actually Raffine, the one that's pounding us to a 3-2?
I don't know. So conclusions that David drew after playing this for 2 more leagues, bringing his total number of leagues with the deck up to like 4 or 5 now.
Yeah.
And I played this deck last week myself. He said that when he draws Raffine and plays it on turn 3, the deck feels basically unbeatable. He only lost 1 game across 2 leagues where he played turn 3 Raffine.
That's the same as I was saying.
That being said, the rest of the deck is just like a bunch of 2-drops and 1-drops, and if that's all you're drawing, you're just weaker than everybody else. right? Specialist bringing back something back is fine, but it's not enough to make up for the inherent lack of power of just being a bunch of 1 and 2 drops in Orzhov colors.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Specifically, if you want to keep playing this in the post-ban metagame, David had a few thoughts here, right? He said he liked the list better when there was a lot more red removal, because shock effects, stomp effects don't do as well against like the 5/5 demon, or Raffine is a 1/4 with ward. If people are playing more fatal push effects, then they don't care about your demon. Similarly, just like a lot of the creatures in this deck naturally have lifelink. That's the Extraction Specialist, that's the Archfiend's Vessel. There's a 1 Valentine Dean of the Vein. If you're playing a lifelinker throwing some counters on it from Raffine, that's a decent B plan when there's a lot of aggro. It's less exciting if there's a lot of Lotus combo and blue-white in this future metagame. Thalia's probably still a good call. And Winota, which was a terrible matchup for the same reasons that Mono Green hates Winota, that's gone, so that's also another sigh of relief. The black-red matchup was always tough. They just have too much removal. It's too easy for them to stabilize. So if black-red takes a step back, that would be a good sign for this deck, but we're still in the medium plus range for this archetype as a whole.
Yeah.
All right, finally,
the party just started.
The party is started and it's already over. It's closing time for this party. I had to test out the black-white Coveted prize deck. Right, this is the deck I've been trying to make this good for what feels like a year. Extraction Specialist and Mage's Attendant are new cards from Streets of New Capenna that each provide 2 bodies. They contribute 2 bodies towards my party. Now that I have those, I'm like a little more hopeful that I can try to get up to party 3 or possibly even party 4 to power up Coveted Prize, to power up Archpriest of Iona. I've got a squad commander in this deck as like a payoff for getting Coveted Prize for 4, or, cast it for just 1 black, immediately get the squad commander, make a bunch of tokens, give my team lifelink, or rather give my team +1/+0 indestructible. The dream was all there. In practice, I mean, yeah, you can you can guess what happened. We started off strong with a 3 and 2. And then I followed up with a second league, hoping to go 3 and 2 again, and actually ended up only getting 2 and 3. So
there was no hope.
Clearly worse, right? Every other deck was 3 and 2, and this one was 3-2 into 2-3.
You know why?
Why is that?
Because you didn't have Raffine. You didn't have the 3-2 secured.
I think that's exactly what it was. Like, this deck really, really lacked power. As cool as it was, I mean, I took as many screenshots as I possibly could. I felt like I have one job.
Get the screenshots.
Test this and get as many screenshots of party doing its thing, right? Get the screenshots of fully powered Coveted Prize. Get the screenshots where I top deck Archpriest of Iona, and even though it's summoning sick, I have a full party, so I get to fly over because it has that trigger at the beginning of combat. Like, I did this a bunch of times, but every time I pulled it off, it didn't feel broken. It just felt like, oh, I got like a little bonus, but I know how much I had to bend the deck to get this stuff in here.
Yeah.
And the party was holding me back for sure.
Okay.
Sad to say. Even the Mage's Attendant, like, playing this and like, yeah, I got counter magic protection up. Like, it's just not enough. It's not enough protection.
Not paying 1 mana for 1 is not enough. I really want to retry my party modern deck that I had a while ago that was able to 3-2 consistently.
Oh, with like Magda and Changelings and stuff?
No. It was actual party deck but the payoff, but instead of being like extremely aggro with Coveted Price, the payoff was the Commander. That's 1 mana if you have a party.
Oh, Tazri.
Yeah.
The Beacon of Unity.
Yeah, and you just play a turn 3 test free and just start activating and grinding your opponent into the ground. Because a lot of party members are Hatebears.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I was in the wrong format. Like, here's what happened, right? So I played 2 leagues, right? Every time I drew, like, Luminarch Aspirant, Extraction Specialist, I was like, okay, my cards feel powerful. I've got, Mutavault or something. Like, these are good cards. I'm in contention, right? This could go my way. And then the games where I just drew, like, Raffine's Informant, Blood-Soaked Champion, Archpriest of Iona, which, like, looks very cool, but it's no Champion of the Parish. Like, if they have any removal at all,
yeah,
it doesn't matter what they kill. They can kill the Archpriest, they can kill something else. them just like reducing your board presence just nerfs the Archpriest. It's very discouraging. I felt like I could never beat a red deck, and there were plenty of red decks when I tested this.
I think, yeah, I had the same. However, when I was playing my deck, I also lost to Lava Dart a lot, and Lava Dart is out of the meta, so maybe it's time for Party to try again. Damn, I want to play Party in Modern and lose.
We shift the party over to Modern. I like it. The dream is not dead yet.
That's the goal.
But don't play this Pioneer version.
No. Just, if you want to play Extraction Specialist, play Raffine, have fun. Enjoy the Raffine.
Yeah. Extraction Specialist, my kind of final conclusion is that it is a good card, but it's not so good that it can compensate for playing bad cards. You still have to like fill the deck with good cards, and
yeah.
I think both my list and David's list did not succeed on that metric.
Yeah, I think that's the reason. I think the reason my list got the 3-2 consistently is I'm not devoting myself to a specialist. I'm playing a deck where a specialist is good.
Mm-hmm.
And the other modern deck that has had a sort of revival, and I actually faced it yesterday when I got a 5-0, I almost lost to it, incredibly, was Humans. Extraction Specialist in Humans, they're playing a playset of Pyre of Heroes. And the lines they can get are pretty annoying. Like yesterday they just had like a Talia on board which did nothing. They sacrificed it to get... It was late in the game. They just got Extraction Specialist, get back a Charming Prince, play the Extraction Specialist, get back a Phantasmal Image, copy my Solitude, kill my Omnath.
So insane.
So all of a sudden, that Talia transformed into a 3-2 lifelinker, a 2-2 DTV, and a Solitude.
You know, we tend to think of Renegade Railier as a bad card or a failed card, but there's some insane things you can do with that effect, right? And a deck like Humans just can't enable Renegade Railier. It's not possible.
Exactly.
Mana base. But if you give them the option to like put an Extraction Specialist in instead, they can do some insane things.
And they then went ahead and sacrificed a Specialist to get... They got a 4-drop. Which 4-drop did they get? I think it was like Piankira Nalar.
Oh, Piankiran.
Yeah, and they just fought to the board. But I think there's actually some merit to Extraction Specialist in the Humans deck with Pyre. Because it's just... The Pyre itself makes every single top deck into an annoying top deck. Like, the most common thing is they play Darius Lieutenant, sacrifice it, get Extraction Specialist, get Darius Lieutenant again. And it's a double pump to the whole board.
Yeah, maybe that's what I should have been playing in Pioneer. Like a Pyre, Humans... Well, yeah. I don't know. There's just not enough good Humans, though.
Maybe. But yeah, that's the other place where it has seen a lot of success in Modern.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we'll call it here for Extraction Specialist, a card that I think we'll see more of, although not in these specific decks. I think these decks need a little more work.
Yeah.
But that's why we test them.
But a card we're happy with.
Yeah, I'm happy with it too. All right, we are going to call it here for today. We will be back on Monday for our first crack at Ginny Faye Jetmir's Second, the winning card for our second monthly project.
Before we go, I just want to make the tiny announcement on today's episode because it's the one that's going to come faster to, today. On Friday's episode, it's the faster to the 8. All access tokens all around. Remember, it's $25 for 3 weeks of anything you want to play, any format, all the cards. So if you ever wanted to get into MTGO, it's the best deal there is by a mile.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks now. I think so. Almost 3 weeks until the 25. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, we don't talk about that too much, but I mean, having access to all of the cards is what makes it possible for us to do this podcast, right? And you can do that on Magic Online in a way that is just unthinkable in paper. So if you're a brewer who is like on the fence about whether Magic Online is a client worth trying, I mean, now is the perfect time to just try it.
Yeah, they're access tokens.
$25 to have access to every deck you want. Even if you're just thinking about which decks do I want to buy in paper. Absolutely worth it.
Testing anything you want for that amount for $2 a day is a really good deal for anybody. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you're on like a rental service right now, you can just pause a rental service and it's cheaper to get the all access token.
It's not only cheaper, it's more comfortable because you don't have to be constantly trading cards. You just have access to everything. Like even I do that. I just stop my trading for like 3 weeks and then I restart it. It's amazing.
All right. Well, a little PSA, a little nugget thrown into our sign off.
Exactly.
All right. Now, for real this time, we're calling it for today.
Yes.
We'll see you again on Monday.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Deck lists for this episode can be found at our homepage, faithlessbrewing.com. And tune in on Monday for our brew session featuring Ginny Faye Jetmir's Second. Support for this podcast is provided by brewers like you. If you like what we do, you can join our community at patreon.com/faithlessbrewing for Discord access, bonus content, and more. That's all for today. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.